On this Thursday night, big changes to immigration policy in Canada. Why the door is closing on tens of thousands of newcomers.
We are an open country, but not everyone can come to this country.
And what it means for businesses. New details about how a young employee died at a Walmart store in Halifax.
I can't imagine what the family's going through, what the employees are going through.
How it's believed her mother found her, and the message from police to the public. And a league of their own.
We could come and enjoy, bring our family members out.
The Aboriginal Curling League, still sweeping strong after 30 years.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The federal government is making major changes to immigration numbers in Canada, pulling up the welcome mat and closing the door to tens of thousands of people it was planning to allow into the country in the years ahead. In 2025, the number of people granted permanent residency will drop by 21%. Numbers will also be cut in subsequent years. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau admits too many newcomers have arrived in too short a time, straining housing and health care.
We are acting today because in the tumultuous times as we emerged from the pandemic, between addressing labour needs and maintaining population growth, we didn't get the balance quite right.
For a country built on immigration, it is a significant shift, one driven by public and political pressure. Mackenzie Gray has our top story tonight.
It's one of the biggest policy reversals in Justin Trudeau's tenure.
We're announcing that we will reduce the number of immigrants we bring in over the next 3 years.
A drastic swing from a government that for years rapidly increased immigration, which was set to culminate in 2025 and 2026. Canada had planned to accept 500,000 permanent residents annually. Now that number will be slashed by more than 20%, decreasing every year until 2027, when a total of 365,000 people will get permanent residency.
While we are still and continue to be an open country, that volume that we have put forward is something that is of concern.
One concern the Bank of Canada has repeatedly highlighted about immigration, how new immigrants, through no fault of their own, have been a major contributor to increasing rents and house prices relative to how many houses are being built. But Mark Miller warns addressing immigration alone won't fix all affordability issues.
It is also undeniable that the volume of migration has contributed to affordability, but there's some nuance there. You can't go around saying that all the ills of society are caused by immigration.
Canada's population is now projected to decline by 0.2% in the next 2 years, which according to StatsCan would be the first time since Confederation that the number of people in Canada would decline.
He destroyed the best immigration system in the world, a system that had a common sense consensus of conservatives and liberals for 150 years.
The Canadian population has been growing by roughly 3% annually, by far the most in the G7, and one of the fastest in the world, in part due to businesses asking for additional workers to fill previous labor shortages.
Businesses should no longer rely on cheap foreign labor. My message to them is that there is no better time to hire and invest in Canadian workers.
Which experts worry could be harder in the future with a smaller labor pool.
So the people who depend on hiring immigrants, who depend on selling stuff to newcomers, they're going to feel some pain.
And Mackenzie is with me now. Mackenzie, what did the Prime Minister say today about that caucus meeting yesterday when some of his MPs confronted him about his leadership?
Yeah, those rebels, Donna, gave the Prime Minister until Monday to decide if he's going to step down. And I asked about Mr. Trudeau on his timeline this morning. So are you planning on staying as Prime Minister past October 28th?
Yes. We're going to continue to have great conversations about what is the best way to take on Pierre Poilievre in the next election. But that'll happen with me as leader going into the next election.
So that's pretty clear, Donna, and that led to this afternoon where one of the only Liberals to publicly call for Mr. Trudeau to resign, PEI Sean Casey, told us he's moving on from the fight.
Now I've got to take my energy and to direct them to winning my seat and not on internal party matters. As far as I'm concerned, it's closed.
But other MPs like Wayne Long from New Brunswick are disappointed that Trudeau took so little time to reflect on their concerns, the very ones that started all of this internal Liberal drama. But the letter that they presented to Mr. Trudeau yesterday didn't outline any consequences attached to the Monday ultimatum. So right now, Donna, it's not clear what those MPs see as their next move, if they even have one.
Okay, Mackenzie in Ottawa, thanks. The Sikh community in Halifax is rallying around the family of a 19-year-old who died inside a Walmart store. What happened to her is deeply disturbing. Her body was found inside a walk-in oven in the store's bakery department, and it was her mother who found her. Police are investigating, and as Heidi Petracek reports, there are lots of questions.
Candles flicker at this growing makeshift memorial outside the Walmart at the center of this unimaginable tragedy, where a 19-year-old employee was found dead Saturday inside a store bakery's oven.
It's a nightmare. I feel sorry for the family, the co-workers. It's very shocking. It's very sad.
She's been identified by members of the Sikh community here as Gursimran Kaur. She recently came to Canada with her mother from the UK. Balder Singh from the Maritime Sikh Society spoke with Gursimran's mother and says he's now working to bring her father to Canada too.
If the husband comes here, that will be a really good thing for the family.
The Walmart was still open Saturday when a 911 call was made around 9:20 p.m. The Sikh Society says Kaur's mother also works at the store and had been frantically looking for her daughter. Gursimran apparently hadn't been seen for several hours, and ultimately it was her mother who made the terrible discovery.
When she noticed that her phone is not responding, after a while she found her body in that oven, and that's really sad.
Just how could this have happened? Police have only confirmed the young woman was in a walk-in bakery oven, the kind often used in large grocery and retail stores.
Police are calling this a very complex investigation and are also warning members of the public not to share speculation on social media.
Just be patient with our investigation and let us do our job.
The story now making headlines around the world and on social media. Fundraising for the family has surpassed its goal in less than 24 hours. Walmart says employees are receiving psychological support, and those who'd been scheduled to work are getting paid while the store remains closed. Singh, like many learning about this terrible story, doesn't know how Kaur's mother will ever recover. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
An investigation is underway in Toronto after 4 people were killed in a fiery crash. The Tesla they were in collided with a concrete pillar in downtown Toronto just after midnight. The car burst into flames. Police suspect speed played a factor. 5 people in their 20s and 30s were in the car. 4 of them died at the scene. 1 woman was pulled from the wreckage and has non-life-threatening injuries. People in Lebanon are bracing for another night of intense Israeli airstrikes. 6 buildings were leveled last night in southern Beirut. The capital was hit by 17 airstrikes. Lebanese officials say at least 2,500 people have been killed since Israel began these attacks. And according to the UN, nearly 1.5 million Lebanese have been internally displaced across the country. In Paris, more than 70 nations and international organizations have pledged $1 billion to try to help Lebanon. Conference organizers say $800 million will go towards humanitarian aid and $200 million is earmarked to boost Lebanon's security forces. Lebanon's Prime Minister says the government will recruit more troops and could deploy 8,000 soldiers to the southern border. That could be part of a potential deal to implement a ceasefire, though there is no ceasefire on the horizon. The American Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, was in Qatar today trying to restart stalled ceasefire talks on Gaza. The UN Secretary General says civilians in Gaza's besieged north are now rapidly exhausting all available means for their survival. And as Redmond Shannon reports, there is little hope the situation will change.
As distressing as the images are of dead and injured women and children, the faces of those who see it up close are almost as arresting. This, an airstrike on a school building in central Gaza. Israel says it hit a Hamas command and control center. Growing hunger compounds the trauma. This man says he waited for bread for his family since 6 a.m. but got none. If we don't die from the war, we will die from hunger, he says.
The humanitarian operations are absolutely painstaking, complex.
Sam Rose with the United Nations Relief Agency in Gaza says the 2 main issues in moving aid are lawlessness in the south and Israel's military operation in the north, where the local civil defense has suspended its operations.
These are worse than anything we've seen since the start of the war last October. We estimate there's still between 50 to 70,000 people trapped inside Jabalia.
Rose says the suspension of the final round of polio vaccinations in the north now puts the success of the entire programme at risk. Israel denies it has a policy of starving people out of parts of northern Gaza. But its biggest backer, the US, has given it an ultimatum to ramp up aid flow as Washington's top diplomat pushes for a ceasefire.
I anticipate that our negotiators will be getting together in the coming days.
Secretary of State António Blinken met with Qatar's Prime Minister.
There is no clarity what will be the way forward or the clear position.
A pessimistic tone from the leader of a country that hosts some of Hamas's surviving leaders. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Turkey says it has struck targets in Iraq and Syria after an attack on a state-owned defense and aerospace company near Ankara. Turkish intelligence blames Kurdish fighters for the attack that killed at least 5 people yesterday. In response, Turkey hit 47 targets linked to the Kurdistan Workers' Party, known as the PKK, and its affiliates. Dozens were reportedly killed. And in Ankara, thousands gathered for the funerals of those killed in the attack on the headquarters of Turkey's largest aerospace manufacturer. In the Philippines, at least 24 people have been killed after a tropical storm triggered widespread flooding and landslides. High winds and heavy rains forced more than 150,000 people to flee, and there are fears many are still trapped. Water levels are so high in some places, homes are nearly submerged. Schools and businesses have also been closed. 1 year after world leaders made a landmark promise to move away from fossil fuels, a new UN report shows countries have made no progress in cutting emissions and tackling the climate crisis. The annual emissions gap report tracks what nations have vowed to do and what they've actually achieved. The report suggests the target set in Paris in 2015 of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century is now out of reach. It also says current policies could lead to 3.1 degrees of warming above pre-industrial levels. The power of celebrity endorsements coming up, how much influence stars really have on an election. There is a break in a high-profile murder case in the U.S. The district attorney in Los Angeles is recommending the resentencing of the Menendez brothers. Eric and Lyle Menendez have spent 28 years in prison, part of a life sentence for the 1989 murders of their parents in Beverly Hills.
I came to a place where I believe that under the law, resentencing is appropriate, and I am going to recommend that to a court tomorrow.
Last week, about 30 members of the Menendez family made a plea for the brothers' early release, arguing they killed their parents in self-defense after years of sexual, physical, and psychological abuse by their father. If the court approves the request, the Menendez brothers could be eligible for parole immediately. We're 12 days away from the U.S. presidential election, and where the two candidates are campaigning tells you what they are fighting over. They're both in battleground states. In 2020, 7 states were won by a margin of 3 percentage points or less.
With your help, 12 days from now, we're going to win Arizona. We're going to defeat Kamala Harris.
And so Donald Trump is in the West today, in Arizona this afternoon, which narrowly went to the Democrats in 2020. He'll be in Nevada later. Kamala Harris is pulling in some big names as she holds a rally in Georgia tonight. Bruce Springsteen is expected to be there, along with former President Barack Obama. Our Washington Bureau Chief Jackson Prosko is with me now. Jackson, how much does that star power help, especially in such a tight election?
Well, Donna, I think we know that Democrats have traditionally had star power on their side. And in these final days of the campaign, these events are supposed to be all about drumming up enthusiasm and attracting interest among people who might not otherwise care about a presidential race. Harris already has Taylor Swift in her corner, and more recently, former President Barack Obama hit the campaign trail. Then you add in Bruce Springsteen, Samuel L. Jackson, and reports of Beyoncé joining her tomorrow, and it sure feels like a tidal wave of support. But political experts are cautioning that that's not necessarily what voters are looking for in 2024, and that star power may actually feel a little less meaningful now because social media has given celebrities and everyday people a more authentic way to reach voters. Donna, we should also note that Donald Trump's biggest celebrity backer to date may be Elon Musk. But of course, Musk is also supporting Trump's campaign financially.
And Jackson, Donald Trump has rallies in Arizona and Nevada today, and he talked to a conservative podcast host who asked how he'd deal with the various criminal charges against him if he's elected. What did he say?
Yeah, obviously his own legal woes are very much top of mind. Trump was asked what his immediate priority would be if he wins. He was asked would he pardon himself in the multiple federal criminal trials he faces, or would he rather fire special counsel Jack Smith, who brought all those charges? Here's what he said.
It's so easy. I would fire him within 2 seconds.
Is it surprising? No, but it absolutely speaks to Trump's mindset here. He's not talking about fighting and winning in the courts the way a typical defendant would. He's talking about using the power of the presidency to end his own legal problems. And Donna, that's something no ordinary American could ever dream of.
Yeah, making it very clear what he would do. Jackson Prosco in Washington, thanks. And on Tuesday, November 5th, you can join us for America Votes for a Canadian perspective on this historic election. We'll be streaming live from Washington, D.C., beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, wherever you watch Global News, including globalnews.ca, YouTube, the Global TV app, and Prime, so no excuses. Millions without care ahead. New figures reveal how many Canadians still can't find a family doctor. If you have a family doctor, count yourself lucky. Canadians take great pride in socialized medicine, but the shortage of family physicians has gone on for years and is getting worse. A new report finds roughly 5.4 million Canadians don't have a primary care provider. Catherine Ward looks at what, if any, progress is being made.
Markham Family Health Team, how can I help you?
Dr. Alan Grill says people call Markham Family Health Team every day trying to find a doctor who will care for them.
We keep a waiting list, and every time somebody either opens up their practice a little bit to serve the community better, those spots are taken up almost immediately.
New national data shows 5.4 million Canadians don't have access to a doctor or nurse practitioner for entry-level care. Stacey Palmer has been without a family doctor since 2019 when she moved to Iroquois Falls in Northern Ontario.
I've been using online services. I've been using private services. It's just that on disability, it makes it a challenge to pay for all of these services. I've even resorted to going to the States.
83% of Canadians reported having regular access to a healthcare provider in 2023. That varied depending on location, though. Nunavut comes in the lowest at 42%, and Northwest Territories is not far ahead at 59%. Ontario clinched the top spot, where 88% have access to primary care.
These numbers are considered a baseline and capture a snapshot as of 2023. They don't reflect any changes from healthcare investments made by the federal government in the last year.
Some trends in the report signal the health sector is starting to recover after weathering a multitude of challenges spurred on by the pandemic.
More than 2.3 million surgeries were performed in 2023, and this represents an increase of 5% over the level in 2019.
Federal Health Minister Mark Holland says he knows medical needs in rural communities are a pressing matter and that many can be addressed with family health teams.
We need to move from a system based in crisis to a system based in prevention. We know that 70% of chronic disease and illness is preventable, and that's what these interventions are about.
And I just think it's something that needs to be fixed quickly across this country because everybody has the right to primary care with a family physician or nurse practitioner.
Catherine Ward, Global News, Toronto.
For the love of the game, next, how generations of Indigenous curlers are bonding at the rink. More than 30 years ago, a man who loves to curl started the Aboriginal Curling League in Winnipeg. He thought it would help bring his community together, and boy, he was right. As Tegan Rasha reports, the league has evolved into a tradition that spans generations.
It's the sport he's played and loved for decades. And at 80 years old, Norman Mead still curls at the Assiniboine Memorial Curling Club every Tuesday night.
Curling, as you might know, is a way of bringing people together for a good social event.
Mead, who's from Manickatoggin First Nation, started curling back in the 70s. He and his friends are self-taught, learning on a homemade sheet of ice in their community. When Meade moved to Winnipeg, he wanted to keep playing, and the Aboriginal Curling League was born.
And if we could start a league of our own so that we could come and enjoy, bring our family members out and enjoy each other's company for one night a week. And I guess that's about 30 years ago, and we've been running it ever since.
The league started off with 20 curlers. Decades later, membership is still going strong, with all levels and ages welcome. For Meade, that means he now gets to play with his 11-year-old granddaughter.
It feels good to play with your grandpa or grandparents that you have.
Yes! Meade now serves on the committee as an elder and has handed over the responsibility of running the league to his daughter, Loretta Ross.
In the Indigenous community, you get to get out and meet a lot of people and just socialize and have a lot of fun and play a little bit of competitive curling.
Every spring, the league hosts a large bonspiel with dozens of teams coming from Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario, a highlight of the season that people return to year after year.
The kids grew up in that environment where they got to see how much fun it was and still be able to curl and have that community sense and belonging.
A league full of smiles and competition. Tegan Rasha, Global News, Winnipeg.
Who doesn't love a good bonspiel? That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is the festive fall celebrations at Place Royale in Quebec City. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.